What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and today we are talking about a new archetype that just got revealed. You might have seen that earlier this morning or this afternoon, Obedience Schooled, which was previously like a $1 card, rose all the way to what, $12, and at some point I saw a couple listings for $10, but this card has like gone way up in price, and people are wondering why that's happening, and it's because of this new archetype. Before we get into discussion, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of the congrats that you guys posted on Twitter for my new engagement. I might do a video going over some of my favorite memes and comments from the posts that I made about that, because a lot of them are really funny and really heartwarming as well. So I just want to say, you know, I do this as my job, of course, but it's so much more than that. And when I see such a positive sort of a response from the community when something really important in my real life, not my Yu-Gi-Oh life, happens, it's just really humbling. And I love you guys so much. You guys are all great, but I just want to give that shout out at the beginning. And anyway, let's get into discussion. So if you don't know what Obedience School is, that's perfectly fine. It's a very old card. It's a spell card that says, if you control no monster, special summon 3 level 2 or lower beast type effect monsters with different names from your deck. Their effects are negated, sadly, and they are destroyed during the end phase. If you activate this card, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except beast type monsters. Now, this card has never been super competitive. I mean, it has seen play as a rogue sort of card in the baby raccoon strategy, but that was never like a top tier contender, and I really didn't see a ton of competitive success. But it's still a very powerful card. You know, it's a +2, and it gives us some much needed support to a very small subset of monsters that otherwise don't have a lot of support. All these new cards work with Obedience Schooled, and I'm just going to say before we go to the next screen here and take a look at them that they're not that great, but they are really adorable. I mean, really cute, and that's the main reason people are talking about them, and they have some cool interactions. The first card that we're going to talk about is actually a normal monster. No, all of these are not normal monsters, but this is a level 2 normal monster with 2100 defense and 0 attack, and it is Murph Rabi. Now, I don't really know what the names of these cards will be once they hit the TCG. This is in Rise of the Duelist, so we won't see this set until after, like, at the very end of summer. So this won't be out for like WCQ or anything, and this is just kind of like one of the cards that you can use. Now, why do I think this card was printed? I mean, in an archetype not really having a lot of normal support, the main reason is that you can summon this thing off of Rescue Rabbit and make their rank 2 monsters, which I think is going to be really good. So even though, yes, it is a normal monster, which isn't very good, I think that this card actually will see play just because you can summon it with Rescue Rabbit as well as Obedience School just in general. Summon those rank 2 monsters that are pretty decent. The Raccoon one that people have played in the past is still pretty good, but their rank 2s are actually pretty decent as well. The first effect monster we're going to look at is Murph Fenny, which is like a fox, I believe, and this is where you start to realize how these cards work, because all of them have pretty much the same first effect, or at least the same trigger for the first effect, which is if your opponent normal or special summons a monster, or if this card is targeted for an attack by an opponent's monster, you can return this card to the owner's hand and then something happens. In the case of this card, you get to then special summon any beast from your hand. Keep in mind there that it's not limited to just level 2 or lower beast monsters, so you can maybe cheese out some bigger beasts if you want to, and you can't summon itself, which makes sense. During the end phase, you can special summon this card from your hand, and that is kind of weird. So one of the things that I wish these cards did was special summon themselves during the opponent's end phase, not your own, because special summoning a whole bunch of useless level 2 monsters in your end phase isn't really that good. But it would be kind of cool if you could, on your opponent's turn, you know, bounce them back to the hand, search some cards, as you'll see in a second, and then during their end phase, you fill your entire board and make some rank 2s on your turn. That's not quite how it works, but this is where you see what most of these cards do. Pretty much all of them, when your opponent normal or special summons a monster or declares an attack on this monster, you can bounce it back to the hand to do something, and then during the end phase, they can all special summon themselves from your hand. During your end phase, I should say, they can all special summon themselves from the hand. The Murph cat monster is the same thing, but instead of special summoning a beast from your hand, it searches any beast monster, once again, not level 2 beast monsters, from your deck. So you can search any beast monster from your deck, and once again, I mean, just look at these cards. They're so cute. I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know if it's because they don't have complete lines that makes them cute, or the fact that they're using pastel colors, or they almost look like watercolored. It's really interesting artwork. I posted this on Twitter as well, but I really hope these cards are all printed as common, because I think they'll look best as common, so you can really focus on the artwork. I think that any sort of foiling might sort of take away from the style of these cards. But so this one's pretty good. Searches any beast monster. That's going to be like the main thing you want to do, and I think it really goes to show that even though this deck might not seem super powerful only with their own archetype cards. The fact that you can special summon any beast from your hand and that you can search any beast is actually pretty promising just for any future release of a beast monster. The Murph puppy is pretty good as well. When you bounce it back to the hand with its card effect, you get to special summon a level 2 or lower beast monster from your deck, except itself, and this one is restricted to level 2 or lowers, which kind of sucks, but you can bring out those baby raccoon monsters. I think that you probably will play those. Once we go through the last main deck monster for this archetype, we'll look at those baby raccoon cards as well. But I think that in general, you're going to want to play Obedient Schooled for sure, but also those baby raccoons just because they're pretty good normal summons and stuff along those lines. The last main deck monster for this archetype, when it's bounced back to the hand using its card effect, you get to add a level 2 or lower beast type monster from your graveyard to your hand. So this gives you a little bit of recursion. Not the greatest card. To me, it seems like you wouldn't necessarily play 3 copies of this one and 3 copies of the dog. They're both very, very good, but so far it seems like the fox and the cat are definitely the 3-ofs. Maybe these ones you just play 2 copies of or 1 copy of, depending on how your build ends up looking like. Before we go too much further though, I want to go over a couple of the baby raccoon cards. Now these have been out for a while, but I feel like they will be played in this deck as well because they're all level 2 beasts. Poco has always been like the main normal summon of baby raccoons. When you normal summon it, it's sort of like a tour guide, except it summons a level 2 beast monster and it summons it in face down defense position. And also during the turn that you use that effect, you can only special summon beast monsters. So very similar to the Obedient Schooled restriction. I do feel like it's worth mentioning the difference in the restriction of this card versus Obedient Schooled. So with Obedient Schooled, you're allowed to special summon non-beast monsters before you use the card. The restriction is only after you use the effect. This one though restricts you for the entire turn, before and after you use the ability. So keep that in mind if you're constructing your deck and you have some cards that are special summons and are not beast monsters. You can do those before the Obedient Schooled, but you can't do those before the Poco if you want the ability to actually work. The main card you're setting off this effect is usually Baby Raccoon Tan, which has a flip effect that special summons 1 level 2 beast type monster from your deck. So that can get you to any of the monsters for that archetype or any of the Baby Raccoon cards as well. It is sort of like the main combo that Baby Raccoons used to do back in the day. One of the newer cards, and by newer I mean like the end of 2014 or almost early 2015, was the Mystical Beast of the Forest, the Fawn card, and this one is really, really solid. Definitely a staple 3-of. This is a level 2 beast monster that says you can discard 1 card, then target 1 level 2 or lower beast monster in your graveyard, except this card obviously special summon it in attack position or face down defense mode. You can only use that effect once per turn. It's a hard once per turn effect. This is like one of the main cards for pretty much every single Baby Raccoon strategy, and it definitely will be played in this strategy as well because you can get back any card you want. Back to the new cards though, we have Murph of the Forest. By the way, this is my favorite artwork. I mean, just by far, it is adorable. They're all there, but you have some new ones as well, so maybe they'll get more support in the future. You can see there's a panda, there's a raccoon, I think it's like a llama or something, so maybe we'll get more support for this deck in the future that'll make it even better. Well, I say even better, but that would imply that it's great right now, but maybe it'll make it better in the future. We'll have to wait and see. So this card says it takes 2 level 2 monsters, which is great because they're all level 2, and you can only use each effect of this card's name once per turn, so hard once per turn there. And it says, first, you can attach 1 material to add any Murph card from your deck to your hand. Pretty good, not just monster cards, cards in general, which is really nice as well. And then the second effect is that if another face-up Murph monster or monsters you control return to the hand, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls while that monster is face-up on the field. It cannot attack nor activate its effects. That's kind of like the main lock you're trying to do here. Unfortunately, this card only has 500 attack points, so it's not a very aggressive card, but it is sort of a cool defensive card. You know, if your opponent normally special summons a monster, all of their main deck monster effects triggered to bounce themselves back to the hand, which will trigger this card. So if you open Obedient Schooled, you can usually set this thing up with at least like 1 sort of negation there, which is pretty neat. The main boss monster though is Murph Mammy, and this thing is really, really solid. This is definitely like the card you want to try to go for. You know, it's really, really good, especially in the context of all the cards that we've seen so far. This thing takes 2 or more, not just 2, level 2 beast monsters, and it gains bonus effects depending on how many seeds material that it actually has. The first effect is a quick effect that lets you once per turn attach 1 beast monster you control or in your hand as material to this card. That's great because a lot of the Murph cards actually do sort of plus. You know, they search cards, they add cards back from your graveyard, they special summon cards, so that should be pretty easy to do. You know, you could Obedient School this card out, summon it with 3 material, and then instantly attach a 4th material from your hand. That's only a 2-card combo to get this card with 4 materials on it, which is pretty exciting. The second effect says this card gains the following effects based on the number of materials attached to it. If you have 3 or more, it cannot be destroyed by battle. Pretty cool. 4 or more, you take no battle damage from battles involving this card. Okay, kind of neat. But most importantly, the 5 or more material effect says when this card declares an attack that battles with an attack position monster, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack of that attack position monster. Obviously, what you're trying to do here is just attack a big opponent's monster with this card, maybe even multiple copies of it, and just do a lot of damage. Very similar to how the U-Bell monsters work as well, which is kind of interesting. This is like the main thing you're trying to do. You also have the baby raccoon, rank 2 monster, the Ronin raccoon, that summons a token, and that token can have as many attack points as whatever the highest attack monster on the field is. So you can do a lot of damage. You know, that token will have a lot of attack, this card will have a lot of effect damage there, and that's kind of your main win condition. Right now, we also know a couple spells and traps for this deck. So we know one good spell card, which is this one amazing trap card, and one okay spell as well. Keep in mind, all of these cards are searchable by the rank 2 that we first looked at, so just sort of when you're thinking of these cards, remember that you can search them. This card is called Murph Hide and Seek. The second effect is a hard once per turn, but let's take a look. So the first effect says, each turn, the first time each beast monster you control would be destroyed by an effect, it is not destroyed, which is great. You know, it protects your board from card destruction, and that's really nice because you have a lot of defensive cards that you don't want to just get blown up by like Dark Hole or Regeki or Lightning Storm is a more modern example, but just in general it means that your cards are going to be a little bit more difficult to get rid of. Keep in mind that the big sort of boss monster that they have is protected by battle a lot of the time, which makes it really hard to deal with when you also have hide and seek on the field. This second effect is really cool as well. You get to target 3 beast monsters that all have different names. Keep in mind you don't have to target 3 Murph monsters. They can be the baby raccoons or whatever. You shuffle them all from your graveyard into your deck and then draw 1 card. A little bit of recycling, a little bit of a +1 there. Especially after many turns, you can keep recycling cards. Obedient Schooled puts 3 monsters on the field directly, and then you can get them in the graveyard really easily. So I like this card a lot, but what I'm really interested in is this crazy trap card that I just couldn't believe when I first read it. It really brings the entire deck together. Murph Time is a normal trap card that says, detach any number of Xyz material from a beast Xyz monster you control, target up to an equal number of cards your opponent controls, not just monsters, just cards in general, return those cards to the hand. All beast Xyz monsters you control gain 500 attack for each material detached to activate this card until the end of this turn. So this card is fantastic. I mean, this brings the entire deck together because it means that your big boss monster having a lot of material is great because it means that you can bounce your opponent's entire board back to their hand if you want, and this thing is not a hard once per turn. So if you have multiple copies and you have multiple Xyz monsters, you can bounce a lot of cards. Compulsory Evacuation Device has been a great card in recent formats, especially in decks like Altergeist and Guru Control, and this is sort of like an on-theme compulse that you can search really easily. This is like the #1 card you want to have. You know, not only can you use it defensively to bounce your opponent's cards before they make a board, you can also use it aggressively. You know, you can bounce all of your cards on your turn, give your monsters a ton of attack points, and just OTK your opponent. This is a staple 3 of and really the most important card in the strategy right now, and if they get another trap card, another card in general that's at the same power level as this one, it might actually be a pretty competent rogue strategy. The last card is not nearly as exciting as those two. It's basically just a quick play Monster Reborn. It's searchable, and that's cool, and being a quick play is nice as well, but not nearly as exciting as those last 2 cards. You will likely play this card at least as a one of because you can search it, but I'm not saying it's like the craziest card in the deck. The other 2 cards, that spell and that trap, are much better than this one and a lot more exciting just to talk about. Even if this deck isn't going to be super powerful, keep in mind here that Obedient Schooled only has 2 printings. It was printed originally as a super rare and then in a Megatin back in 2014 as a super rare, so this thing just does not have nearly enough copies in circulation, especially seeing how old it is, for everyone to have their copies at like $1 a piece. I would not suggest buying them at $10 a piece. I hope maybe it'll get like a reprint or something along those lines before we get this in the TCG, but it at least will be a fun sort of casual strategy with some really great artwork, and I can't wait to pick up my playsets of all of these cards once Rise of the Duels comes out in the TCG. I'll see you later though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.